Welcome to the Inside Pitch. I'm Christopher Lockhart, the creator and administrator of this Facebook group where screenwriters, creatives, filmmakers meet to ask and answer questions and exchange ideas and information on the craft and business of screenwriting. I am joined as always by the wonderful Ramesh Santanam, who is the co-administrator of our
Hi,
Facebook
everyone.
group. Happy New Year, Ramesh.
Happy New Year to you too, Chris, and everyone.
Oh, all right. You know, it's just one of those mornings. You know.
I know.
I was gonna throw on a tie, but I was like, yeah, forget about it.
I know.
Let's just chill out.
Yeah, it's the new year.
So we've got a pretty amazing guest today. And,
Yes, we do.
Yeah. You know, let's face it. Nobody wants to hear us talk. So why don't you do the introduction?
Okay, happy to. Our first live interview for 2021 is none other than Shane Black. He wrote Lethal Weapon and is credited for reinvigorating the thriller genre and the buddy films. He also wrote The Last Boy Scout, The Long Kiss Goodnight, The Monster Squad, which is a really fun movie, The Last Action Hero, and wrote and directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and The Nice Guys, which starred Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And he recently wrote and directed the remake of Predator. Without further ado, Shane, welcome to the Inside Pitch, my friend.
Good morning.
Los Angeles, California. How is it back there? It's just the sun's out. It's warm. What's it like there?
It is cloudy and muggy in your old hometown.
So Shane, you're from Pittsburgh. Is that
I
right?
am from Pittsburgh. Yeah, and it's one of those things. I always want to go back, and for some reason I never get back. And when you leave Pittsburgh, it's a very insular place. It's great. I loved it. I'd love to live back east again. But when you go to California, there is this quality among sort of people who live in Pittsburgh of thinking that somehow that's an act of you're better than them. Like, oh, you're going out to California. You know, you're going to write dollar bills with with your cigarettes. No, I'm not going to, sleep on a mattress full of money. I'm not saying that, I'm angry with you and I'm leaving because you're a hick or a rube. I am a rube. So yeah, I took some flack for coming to California because Pittsburghers keep to their own. They really love. I just think it's the greatest place in the world. And is this, by the way, going out mostly to Pittsburghers or is it going?
Oh no, everyone.
Everyone, okay.
We have about 13,000 members, and they're all around the world.
Okay, good.
Your reach is great.
If I'm a little bleary, it's going to improve because I slept through the alarm. So, I'm actually talking to you, but you'll notice that the normally sort of mellifluous and grandiloquent style with which I comport myself is slightly stuttery, and it's because I'm like 0 plus 10 minutes awake. So there we go.
Look, it's the new year. I think that our members are delighted. You're in bed, you're in the street, you're in a gutter. I don't think anybody cares. People are just delighted to be able to.
Don't care if I'm in a gutter?
I think they're just delighted to hear you. As long as you can speak from the gutter, I think that,
Well, I would hope that one of them would help me if I'm in the gutter, but that's okay.
I hope so too. All right, so I don't know. Maybe we just kind of bounce around a lot. But since we started in Pittsburgh, maybe we could just ask a little bit, sort of, about your roots. How did you find your way into the film business?
Almost entirely by accident, in the sense that growing up in Pittsburgh, there's not a lot of sense of what movies or screenplays even are. I think that when I was growing up, there was a sense if it was on TV, it just sort of floated over the ether from some odd place somewhere and appeared on your screen, and you watched it, and you pretty much watched anything because it's on TV. It must be good. Just like the 99-cent theater in our neighborhood when I was growing up in Pittsburgh. If there was a movie, you went to see it. You didn't say, I wonder if this is any good. It's a movie. And so the sense that there was a place where there was a codified system of writing down things for screenplays, that people were behind this, even the sense of knowing showrunners and authors that you like, or producers or directors you like. When I was a kid, we didn't have any of that, and there was no internet. So I just treated it like this magic place, which put out things that floated over the airwaves. We moved out here, my dad and I, in 1975, and I ended up going to UCLA. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write. I wanted to be the enemy of the people. And, instead, I just ran into a friend who was the counselor in the theater arts department, and got into theater and started wanting to be an actor, which is a silly thing to want to be. And unless you got nothing else, unless that's it for you. If it's acting or suicide, that's when you should be an actor. If you say, I think I'll try it or I'll dabble, it's, you might as well just start sawing off your toes, because it's about as fun. From there, I just met people. This is the key. Don't be alone. There's people who think that they have to struggle and make it hard because somehow the struggle proves their commitment or dedication. No, make it easy as you can. It's already hard enough. You don't need to struggle. So when I got to UCLA, I made a group of friends, notably Ed Solomon, who wrote Men in Black and Bill and Ted. He was my roommate, and Jim Hertzfeld, who I went to high school with as well, who wrote Meet the Parents, and also, Fred Decker, who I wrote The Monster Squad with. So all these guys, and here's the important part. Easy on my dog. Here's the important part. We didn't say, I'm going to be a star here, I'm going to be in Hollywood, I'm going to do this great thing. We were friends first. We didn't think, I'm going to help this guy, or he's going to help me, or there's something in it for me, or this guy has something I want. We just thought, I like talking about film with this guy. And we had a group of us, about 12, a couple women's, mostly men. And we had this little place we called The Pad, and it was a house in West LA, and we would just go there and talk and argue. There's always something going on. You drive by and you're making a little movie, or crawling around on the roof, or watching and arguing about some kind of film. And we would do this. We're film fans, and we got together and we just had a little intimate group. And by the way, in that group, there was no anger, there was no rancor. I would go to Fred and say, hey, that bit with the cigarette that you had written down for your script, can I steal that? I like that. Can I use it? Oh, sure, take it. Not, I'll sue you. Nothing like that. We just were guys who liked film and talked about it, argued about it, and ultimately made our own little videos. From that, when one of us got a job, which in this case was Ed, he was able to help Fred Decker. And then Fred came to me and said, I like this thing you're writing. Why don't I show it to my agent? And we leapfrogged each other, helped each other by reaching down the ladder rung, grabbing hold and helping the next guy up, so he in turn could, if he, achieved that higher rung, and then help me again or help someone else up the ladder. And we sort of hoisted each other, shoulders over haunches, up the ladder. And that's what we did. We did it by not being alone. Don't be alone as a writer. It's sickeningly, appallingly lonely.
Yeah, it's the best place to start networking is in your own group, with the people that the people you love, the people you respect. And we often tend to work with people that we know because we trust those people. So, and so you each lifted each other up, but like at some point, Shane, you know, you clearly ascended. You know, I mean, it clearly wasn't your plan, I would assume, to sort of become the godfather of modern screenwriters. But so sort of, how did that happen? You know?
Since birth, that was exactly my plan. It was a fluke. It was a strange time, and I'm sure you know this. You're younger than me, but probably not too young to remember.
Not much younger than you, yeah.
Well, I'm 59. What are you?
57.
Oh God, yeah. It only gets worse. So I wrote a script that I hated because I hated everything I wrote because I didn't like myself and I was insecure and very strange. You know, I would write something and I had the unique habit of writing things that I would put in a drawer distraught at how talentless and without merit I was, especially as a screenwriter. And then 6 months later, pull it out and go, well, this is pretty good. Or conversely, I'd finally, you know, hit a streak where I thought I'm really kicking it now, man. And then come to realize that I was off on a tear down a wrong avenue, down a completely wrong street. So I came up with a script. It was about mummies found in an ancient Vietnam temple of soldiers who had been listed as killed in action or missing in action, rather. And they had been taken to this temple.
Uh-oh.
Hang on, let me
Wait.
see if I can unmute him. All right.
Here it is.
All right, here we go. He's back. He's back.
Finger, my undoing.
Are you actually holding your phone? Your arm's going to get tired.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm used to hardship. But so yeah, I wrote a script about the temple in Vietnam where they find this missing unit of soldiers, and they've been mummified and left there. Presumably, they're happy to find them and ship them home because they're no longer missing in action. But then they come to life. They're a time bomb. They're a gift from this shaman or whatever, and they come to life and start killing people in America. I wrote this stupid script called Shadow Company, which got me through some doors. But it was mostly people responding, I think, to the fact that I liked William Goldman and Walter Hill a lot, the two screenwriters who sort of shaped the style that I just decided, well, if these guys I seem to enjoy reading this, so why not just sort of cram their styles together and blend it with my own and see what I think is fun or interesting to read, or what as opposed to the thing I hate the most is when you open a screenplay, and I'm asked to read several every week, and there's a block of text, interior apartment, the sun glances in through the late afternoon, blah, 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 eliminating the floor full of furniture covered in clothing, 10, 13, dressed, high top shoes, button down shirt, yellow tie, wide enough to flip pancakes, sifts through the door. And you think, well, this is, if I wanted to write a novel or read one, I've got a whole shelf right behind me, as you can see. And I thought there must be a way to get you into the story in a screenplay that sort of tosses you in and drags you along, so you feel like you're in assured hands, but the author is doing the work for you, not forcing the reader to do the work. And the thing that I came up with that I think was instrumental in helping me get these things sold was a style that tended to read down the page rather than across, that was more about feeling the flow of it and sort of trying to capture subjectively some degree of, ongoing narrative excitement. So telling you, sort of how, not how the scene exactly plays out, but how it's supposed to feel. And the action beats, instead of just describing, stunt follows stunt as the chase progresses down Sunset Boulevard, I would try to really Rube Goldberg it, go beat by beat and take you inside the action and stuff. And I think that the combination of leaving white space on the right side of your page so your eye goes down the page and then being a little playful, and like William Goldman used to do for me, when he writes things like that, it's as though he's talking to a buddy on a bar stool next to him. He engages you, he plays with you, he has a playful style. Walter Hill, on the other hand, has a very Spartan and terse style that eliminates all the unnecessary baggage and just sort of gives you the skinny, so to speak. Put those two together, and I thought that I had a way of conveying things that at least pleased my eye. It pleased me, and that seemed to be the case. So as I continued to write, and also then you got to have some content. You got to have some substance, something that really you want to talk about, or that amuses or engages you as you write. Otherwise, you'll just be churning out pages. So Lethal Weapon came about then, which was the urban gunslinger story, sort of urban western, and I didn't think it was any good. Halfway through, I threw it out. In fact, I actually have copies. I'd given it to a charity. The original script with the stains on it from where it was in the trash can. In a fit of pique, I dropped it in, and thankfully at that time, living with the pad, it's not so much a testament to my respect for the script as my inability to take out the garbage that I actually could come back and then pull it back free and finish it a week later. So, but yeah, I actually dropped it in the garbage. I was a drama queen, asshole me. Thinking, I don't want to be a writer anymore. And so that's how that went. I turned into my agent. I thought, it's at least I had fun. It's all right. And then he called me and said, dude, I think we can sell this. And yeah, whatever, go ahead. And it was like that. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a fraud and a failure. You're going to find out. There's going to be a guy show up at the door and say, it's my time to be here. And you go flip pancakes in Seattle. And then I would write something and get engaged and excited by it. But it was almost like this door that sometimes opened, this magic land that I could see if I concentrated hard enough and wore the right glasses, it opened up for me. But in between, I felt bereft and alone, and the glasses didn't work. So I was either a fraud or I was excited about what I was writing. And I would think I'm nobody and can't sell it. And then I realized something. I'm talking a lot, but I realized that that's the whole thing. It's psychological, that screenwriting or any kind of writing, I think, happens when you turn fear into problem solving. Because writing is nothing more or less, I'm a fearful fraud. But writing happens when something catches my eye or I'm starting to type, and for a moment I'm engaged. That part of me that knows what it's doing or is interested in such things, it wakes up enough to find something momentarily more interesting than my own fear. I'm writing and I can't do this. I'm a piece of shit. This is awful. I can't do it. Oh my God, I'm typing and I hate this. I want to be anywhere else. And then okay, well, oh shit, what's he saying here? It's okay. Well, she would say this and he would say that. And wait a minute, that's interesting. What if he said this and then she would say that? And in that moment, you can't be afraid and interested by writing at the same time. So your brain has to locate, even for a brief instant, something more attractive to it than its own fear. And fear becomes problem solving. And so once I would do that, I would get a script going and my agent would take it out. And we just sort of had this interesting run of luck where at that moment in time, screenplays on a spec basis were popular. Joe Esterhaus was doing Basic Instinct and Jagged Edge. I know Joe. We used to talk a lot. He was very competitive about the screenplay fees that we were each making. For me, I don't care about setting records. I'm just so happy to have written something. Because as I said, if you look closely, my mind will tell you that I'm actually a fraud who can't write, and you're going to find out any second. And there may be some of you who say, "I've seen your movies. I already found it," you know.
But you did set records, and you're setting these records. You're literally turning the spec market upside down. There are writers at that time. Everybody wants to be Shane Black. People begin to copy your style. I still see it all the time in screenplays. And so, how is this influencing this sort of complex of yours that you're a fraud? Is it just that everybody in the world is dumb, or are you thinking maybe you really do have the right stuff?
It's actually making it worse. And I'll tell you why. There's a famous story about Sir Laurence Olivier, the actor. One night in a performance of, may have been Lear, he blew the doors off the auditorium. Just his performance was so spectacular that the room was electric. The critics were there that night, and there was this audible intake of breath, this at just the stunning kind of improvisational. He caught fire on stage, and they were the standing ovation at the end. People jumped to their feet. This incredible performance that electrified them. They hadn't seen anything like it, and all of the press came running back to the dressing room after the show to congratulate and question Sir Lawrence, and he was tearing the place apart, throwing a chair and stalking and screaming. And they said, "What the hell? You just gave the performance of a lifetime. You got a standing ovation for 4 minutes. Why are you so angry tearing up your dressing room?" And he turned and said, "I don't know how I did it." And that's the thing. I would occasionally churn something out, but the next time I sat down, it felt like there was a dry well, and I couldn't remember how to get back to the magic or how to get engaged in something. And the trick is you just keep typing, of course, but in between, when I would write a bad scene, I would lambaste myself for it. I would think, I can't think of an idea. It's been 2 months. I used to think it's been 2 months. I'm a loser. I haven't written a screenplay in 2 months. And so it got worse because the more people assumed that I knew what I was doing and they were paying me all this money, which I, in my back of my mind, secretly suspected I wasn't worth, it only increased the sense of fraudulence at the sort of opulence of seeing myself referenced as a guy who knew what he was doing, and hearing people call me for advice that I felt I was certainly unsuited to give. But then I would start writing eventually, and then I'd feel fine because once again I turned that fraudulence and fear into problem solving, which doesn't care about whether you think you're a fraud. It just thinks about solving the problem. It's the actual truth of what your abilities are, as opposed to the sort of alcoholic insistence that you're nothing, which creeps in and it forces that hand. I wasn't drinking while I was writing, but for all of you out there, I'm sure among 10,000, there's some friends of Bill out there who are in the alcoholic or addictive category. And you know that plays a part too in any endeavor, because you think you're either up here and you're on top of the world if you're an alcoholic, and you think everyone's better learn from you because you just know what you're doing, get out of the way, or you're down here and you say you're a piece of shit. And how could I have thought that people would even listen to me, because look at them, they're so much smarter than me, and and it's always I'm better than you, or I'm a piece of crap. And it's never I'm on the same level. And that followed me into screenwriting. I would be either know what I was doing and on the job, and in between, when I wasn't writing, I was a piece of crap again. Part of it is just my psychology, and part of it is being an alcoholic. Because it's not a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem.
Right. Do you think that you would have been an alcoholic if you had been a school teacher or a trash collector?
Oh, absolutely. I have the alcoholic gene. So, you know, I'm 12 years sober at this instant. Hopefully, God willing, I'll hit the pillow tonight, still sober. But yeah, it's the thinking behind it. It was the thing I was treating with the alcohol. It was the insecurity and the inability to just function in a way that was free of character defects, that liked myself and respected myself. But you know, you can actually, fortunately, if you know the creative field well, you can actually be creative and succeed and still be a functioning alcoholic to a point. I'm sure we have some people who are drinking right now as they're listening to it.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, if you're not, I suggest you should probably start. It's getting what is it, about 2 o'clock out there? Yeah.
Well, I'm on the West Coast with you, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Because Ramesh is in Pittsburgh, I assume you were back there too.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm in Beverly Hills, CA.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, we've met before, right?
I'm not sure if we've met before. I don't think we have. Maybe we were at an event together. It's possible.
Yeah, you look so familiar. I've not seen your podcast, but you look so glaringly familiar. You know, do we
A lot
ever
of people think I look like Jared Leto or Brad Pitt. You know, I get that a lot. So, you know, and of course, my last name is Lockhart, although I'm no relation to Harry Lockhart. But you know, we're kind of we're like simpatico in that respect. So,
any relation to the wonderful actress?
No. They are Canadian, and my Lockhart line is also Canadian. So maybe somewhere we might have sort of crossed paths in the gene pool, but no, I can't call Jean or June or Kathleen or Anne Lockhart my relatives, sadly.
But nonetheless, you've delved into their lives enough to know their entire family tree and first names. I get it.
Yeah, you know,
yeah,
it's an odd little obsession of mine. You know,
it's an odd name, and it's interesting. And you know,
just for the audience, by the way, that was the surname of the Robert Downey Jr. character in
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Bang Bang.
Right, and just for the audience, the actress June Lockhart was among probably least notably, but most remembered, the mother on Lost in Space, the television series.
Indeed. Mm-hmm.
Where I had the biggest crush on Penny when I was a kid.
Was she the blonde or the brunette?
No, Judy was the sophisticated. Penny was supposed to be the naive, you know.
Okay, yeah. Angela Cartwright then.
Yeah.
Yes.
And her wonderful sister, Veronica Cartwright, I believe.
Great actress.
Oh, she gives the most harrowing death scene in the movie Alien, where she's just weeping and screaming the whole time. It's excruciating. It's the first time I'd seen an actress just give her all like that in a death scene.
She's also the little girl in The Birds. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. She's the girl that I guess Jessica Tandy is her mother or her grandmother or aunt, and you know she's hanging around with Tippi Hedren and Rod Taylor through the movie, and she gets pecked at and stuff. So she was well prepared for the alien attack because you know she'd been attacked by birds just 2 decades earlier. Oh, you're on mute again, Shane. There you go.
I said I apologize for I'm moving to the kitchen briefly to grab something, but keep going.
Great. I
Sorry
love it.
for the vertiginous.
No,
yeah.
This is great. I love this. I wish everybody did this. You know, there's like a little movement, and it's great. So I just want to stay with, if I can, for a moment, this sort of your psychology and because fine, you know, you might sort of feel like you're a fraud or this or that, but then your movies come out and your movies are hits. And they're really popular with audiences. Audiences really like the movies. You know, I mean, Lethal Weapon obviously launched a franchise. Lethal Weapon, although you did not invent the buddy cop movie, you certainly perfected it. And clearly everybody copied that formula after Lethal Weapon came out. So then sort of when now sort of the masses are saying, oh my God, we love Lethal Weapon, you know, or we love any of these other films that you've written. Does that help, or does that continue to screw things up in a tighter knot?
Yeah, I say, wow, I'm so glad that this worked for them and that these scenes really are good. I have no idea how I came up with them, though, because it's true. They sort of come to you knocking, unbidden, while you're pacing around, and the best scenes, you know, the ones that are remembered, you just think, well, I'm so glad now that that scene made it out there. But wait a minute, I have no idea how I did that, because I seem to be dry again. Even if you're writing something good at the time, you'll still say to yourself, or I would, I'm being dry again. This scene sucks. And when the scenes in Lethal Weapon that people remember, when I wrote them, I probably was putting them in a drawer saying, well, that sucks. So I just need the mindset. It's pernicious. It doesn't go away.
But so do you have a process? So, you know, do you outline? Do you write a treatment? What are you doing sort of when you're starting to put a story together? You come up with a concept, you have a character. Did you come up with Martin Riggs first? You know, sort of how does your head work?
I come up with a concept or an idea. I tend not to outline it first. I don't think you want to get far beyond the first act and still not know where you're going or what comes next. But certainly the opening of a movie is kind of freeform. Sorry, I have blood sugar issues. I have to eat something sweet. So basically, I will sit down and spitball. But before I sit down, I think this is important. Once you sit down, I start typing. Either I say, I'm just going to start going and see what comes up. More likely, I'll say to myself, I'm not going to sit down until I have something. And I can't just think it over at the typewriter. Staring at the blank page or the blank screen is the worst thing you can do. So I'm always up. I'm always pacing. I'm always taking a walk. And it's come to the point where when I'm having ideas, I won't even know I'm pacing. I'll just be back and forth around the house, and I won't even think about it. I'll just know that, you know, I wore myself out just stumbling back and forth in my house, because on the move, those ideas tend to come easier. And Stephen King once said, and I echo him, he would say to himself, apparently, I'm going to walk a mile. I'm going to walk to the 7-Eleven and back. He would take a walk. And he said, somewhere along there, I'm not going to pressure myself, say how or when, but I'm going to have an idea. I'm going to put in my head right now that I'm trying to solve a problem or do something. I'm just going to have an idea somewhere in the walk between now and getting back here. And that's, I think, the good thing to do. You just start putting feet in front of the other, go for a walk, breathe the air, look around at the spring, and just know that as you're walking, you're churning and you're trying to get your subconscious to do for you the work that it really wants to do. So much of it is all planned in the subconscious. You're not really thinking of things so much as you are processing them and then teasing them out. It's like those pimple popper videos where they're trying to take earwax out of someone's ear, and you're just teasing it until you get a big lump, basically. But taking a walk seems to provide that for me. And then
I've
you
read a
sit
lot
down.
of screenplays that are like big lumps of earwax.
Well, then you have to take the wax and like shape it into, you know, you make a nice looking bunny out of it or something. But anyway,
All right. I'm turning red. It's, you know, somebody actually, since you're making me laugh, somebody had a question about one of our members. Let me find it. Yeah. Adam Parr asked, do you, Shane, set out to write comedies, or is that just where you go as you write? I mean, because you're clearly a funny guy.
well, it's a good question. Once again, you know, comedy comes from, it occurs to me to use it where appropriate. I couldn't write a comedy to save my life. If you give me a thriller or some kind of legal drama or anything that proceeds from a suspense standpoint, say, you know what, it's a little, could you just lighten it up a little bit, put some jokes in it? Of course I can. It's a thriller, it just needs, you know, some moments of humor. If you say this is a comedy, I can't write it. I freeze, because now it's like, okay, oh, so this, you have to be funny now. That's the whole point of this, isn't it? In a thriller, it's like, you know what, I think I'll be funny now. It just feels right. In a comedy, it's like, you better be funny, asshole. You better be funny. And I can't do that. So for me, it's a process of just keeping myself awake and amusing myself by finding little bits of human behavior or throwing in an old joke. But yeah, the idea of a premise that's funny, I can't, it's like a comedy, you know, so and so, you know, he comes back from the dead. He has 24 hours to, you know, find his missing dog and marry it. I can't do that.
We'll buy that pitch.
Yeah, or something like, I'll watch, you know, 10 Ways to Get Rid of Your Love or whatever that thing was with Matthew McConaughey or Kate Hudson. I'll be delighted by it. I just saw this thing over the Christmas break called Happiest Season. It's an LGBTQ comedy with Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis. Loved it. Chuckled, blah, blah. I can't write it. So the closest thing to a comedy I think I could probably write if I wanted to, one of my favorite films in college and that inspired a lot of what I do, was Barry Levinson's film Diner. Do you know that one?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. That to me was sort of a perfect film when I was of an age. I was like 20 years old and I was just starting to write. And at 23, I was going to sell something, but Diner was a huge influence.
And Barry Levinson, you know, he started out, you know, writing for the Carol Burnett show and you know, those sort of early TV things, but yet he's evolved and can write some really powerful dramas and dramedies and even his directing sense. He has a new movie coming out called The Survivor about Harry Haft, who was a boxer in Auschwitz. And then, you know, after the war, his struggle to find a lost love. You know, hardly a laugh in it. But, you know, but still, such a great sort of sensibility, Barry Levinson. I wouldn't see him sort of, you know, as being, you know, like you say Walter Hill, like I totally get it. Barry Levinson, I don't see it, but now maybe as I start to look and you can see that, you know, some of your stuff has there's some really interesting character nuances. Do you think about those things when you write?
I always try to come up with a runner or a bit or a character's got, it's the same. And once again, I learned from Levinson, it's like in Diner, it's like, hey, are you gonna eat that pickle? Do you want the pickle? No, I'm just saying, if you're not gonna eat it, I just ask for the pickle. Just say I want the pickle. I said, no, I'm just, if you're not gonna eat it. And they go back and forth, and it's always this stuff, and just these exasperated rumpled, chain smoking guys posturing and strutting to sort of support, to fool each other into thinking they're actually cool, when ultimately the strength of the relationship is they're all sort of weak and only bolstered by each other. And that dynamic is tremendously effective and important. It's the mask. Michael Haig talks about it as there's the character and then there's the mask to hide the things the character is afraid of and doesn't want you to see. And you figure out both. What's the character present, and what's that? How much of that is a mask behind which he's hiding something, and and the extent to which you gradually reveal what's being hidden, and it comes out as the character becomes more inadvertently or unwittingly vulnerable. Is Levinson was a master of that.
It's interesting that you quote Michael Haig. Do you read screenwriting books? Do you?
I don't. I just happen to know and like Michael Haig.
I do too, actually. Yes.
He's just a great guy who knows his stuff. He's not looking to sign autographs at Ralph's. He's not looking to be. I don't picture any girl coming up to Michael Haig and saying, "Sign my chest, please." But
he kind of looks like Fozzie Bear.
I wouldn't have gone there, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
At the same time, though, he knows his stuff, and he just calmly and just consistently gives good advice. I couldn't plow my way through Sid Field's book with flashlight and a shovel. I couldn't do it. It's just so dense and harrowing to me to think of doing that much plotting and work and sort of. It's like saying to someone, how do you play hopscotch? And instead of trying to teach you how to jump, they spend an hour on diagramming the sidewalk. So anyway, everyone to each their own. There's great things in Sid's book. I just think that Michael's stuff is a little more human and compelling because it's easier to digest. Maybe I'm just stupid and he's more relatable.
I actually feel the same way. I think there are some interesting things in McKee's book, but it reads like a lot of masturbation to me. So, yeah. Sorry about that analogy for anybody who's still eating breakfast. So
masturbating. I hope you realize that.
Who are you? What's that guy's name?
I'm guessing a good 7 of that is just is really just working on themselves right now.
So
you're a good-looking man. Quiet girl.
I'm gonna put that on my resume.
1 second. I got cone here.
Shane Black.
Aww.
That's a cute dog, by the way. It's a very cute dog. What kind of dog is that?
It's a mixture between a lab and a pit bull.
Oh, wow. He doesn't look like he's very big, though. Is he big? He looks like he's kind of a nice size.
Here's my hand for comparison.
Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, yeah. All right, that's beautiful.
By the way, here's a commercial. These are really fun. I don't know if you know this British comic strip.
Blaze, yeah.
The comic strip's great. They are all available from Titan Books. So I told them they're going to send me a check for mentioning it to you.
All right, folks, remember that. Ramesh can put a link in the comments.
Wasn't there a movie made many years ago, a Modesty Blaze movie?
Yeah, I think it was sort of half Italian or something with Monica Vitti playing Modesty Blaze.
Yeah, it was like, I used to read those years ago. Well, someone here has a question. They're like, with Shadow Company and Lethal Weapon, you had Vietnam veteran characters. Was that conscious to have them as Vietnam vets?
Interesting. Good question. I was obsessed with, maybe I was obsessed with my own courage or lack thereof. And I came up during the Vietnam era where guys like me who were unlucky enough to just be of age were being drafted. And of course, I was too young, but there was a sense that my brothers just narrowly missed it. So I became obsessed with reading everything I could about Vietnam for some reason, where because the war seemed so pointless and there weren't any clear victories, all the stories tended to just be about the endurance of being sent to a place to survive. There's no great battles in Vietnam where they talk about the triumphant victory of the United States Army. There's no D-Day. But there are endless stories of people just trying to acclimate in a place that's completely alien to them, marching up and down and falling in booby traps and losing one or two people on patrol every time you go out. And I was just fascinated by it. I love Platoon, the movie Platoon. So very much, it was just something about that war, which is particularly engaging. I would listen to my brother, Terry, who was also a writer, arguing at the dinner table growing up with my father, because Terry was an anti-Nixon guy who, when he was in college, was appalled by the Vietnam War. And my father, of course, sort of took a more, he later life, he completely changed, but he was initially sort of a Nixonian guy who said, well, I guess we're doing something good over there. He came to realize I think that war, as whatever the intentions were behind it, is not really a proud moment in our past. It's one from which we should probably learn something. And the peace movement, that was all when I was a kid. So it sort of had this scarring effect in a way, because those were turbulent times. I wonder if kids right now during all this turmoil are having a similar experience of just the country being torn apart or sort of in half between two warring factions. But growing up, Vietnam had a very big impact on me. So yeah, it's not an accident.
Interesting. Jeff Harris wants to know about the rumors of Lethal Weapon 5. And I guess coincidentally, Richard Donner just has been quoted about him, I guess, directing Lethal Weapon 5. So I don't know.
I know nothing about it. I was not involved with the script, so it's quite possible.
Isn't Richard Donner like 90 years old?
Yeah, but there's some people who wear it better than others. Last time I had lunch with Dick, he was probably 85 or 86, and he hadn't lost a step really. My mother's 88, and I think she could direct a movie. It's like 90 is the new 50 apparently, and it's just.
But you just think about studios, you think about insurance, and I mean Clint Eastwood's almost 90, so
I think as George Clooney once allegedly said to David O. Russell, they can't replace me, but they can replace you, David. And similarly, I think insurance-wise, if the director, God forbid, were suddenly to feel sick and have to go home, someone else, including Mel himself, could probably finish the movie.
I read a treatment a few years ago for Lethal Weapon 5. I don't recall if your name was on it. I know that I think Charles's name was on it. Charles Landry's name was on it, and I thought that was was going to go. I used to work with Mel. I worked with Mel for 12 years. I used to work with Ed L'Amato at ICM, who repped Mel. So all of those Lethal Weapon rumors and Lethal Weapon 5 stuff would kind of filter through. And then, of course, Mel sort of fell from grace a little bit, but now he's kind of having a resurgence. So,
well, here's the thing: there are those who will never forgive Mel Gibson for his rant, anti-Semitic rant, or for the arguments, very loud arguments he had over the phone, or the threats he made, all this stuff. But yeah, I've taken this tack before, and I've been criticized for it. As a recovering alcoholic, to me, intention matters, and whether you're fixing something as opposed to indulging it. And I know Mel is a nice man. He can be the most generous man ever, the sweetest man, the most creative. There are demons in the mind of every alcoholic, and the question I have is whether we can truly trust anything someone says while they're that drunk. Because if I'm drunk around you, my intention is not to hide that. My intention is to burn the house down. I'm going to use crazy language and say stuff to you that's just going to inflame you, because as a drunk, if you're an angry drunk, you want to burn the house down. You want to piss people off. But then again, there's a line and consequences for any behavior, and if you cross it, you owe some kind of you're owed a consequence. The question is whether he's had sufficient consequences. I think his talent is remarkable, and he's a brilliant director. So all I can say is alcoholism is a pernicious disease, but it's not an excuse. So I'm not excusing Mel's behavior, but I just know from personal experience that I don't mean what I say when I'm drunk.
Yeah, I think that Mel, like all of us, is flawed. The difference is that the world cares about his flaws and doesn't care about my flaws. And the only thing that I'll ever say about Mel is that is that with my experience, he's truly one of the most exhilarating people that I've ever worked with. And you leave the room and you always feel like you're smarter and more energized, and like you've really been in the presence of a really brilliant mind when it comes to sort of what it is that he does. And when I'm in a room, that's all that I care about.
He cares about his craft more than he cares about being famous. He is just a true creative soul. And there are going to be some people who say that doesn't matter, but for the record, if you've been around him, I recommend being around him, especially if you're currently of a mindset that has decided he's not a good man, because everybody's ambiguous, and he's wonderful in so many ways. Anyway.
I've never met anybody who has worked with him who had a bad thing to say about him. My son's grandfather was Patrick McGowan, who played Longshanks in Braveheart, and he hated everybody. He hated every director he ever worked with. He was just cantankerous, and he loved Mel Gibson. Loved Mel Gibson. So I always thought, hey man, if like Patrick, if he could say good things about Mel, then there's definitely good stuff there. So
that said, there is still a lot of Hollywood. There's still a lot of reluctance to cast Mel in a big role. But for instance, I don't think he could have done the new Lethal Weapon 10 years ago.
Right.
12 years ago it might have been, but I think he can now. It's interesting to see what people say, how forgiving they're willing to be based on the offense. Yeah,
I kind of felt like that was the most interesting part of the whole idea of Lethal Weapon 5 was that, would Warner Brothers back a movie with Mel? And if the rumors are true, then, good for Mel. Then, he has come back. He's come full circle. And I hope he does. So
Unless they say, okay, we'll make Lethal Weapon 5, but we'll only spend 80 million on it, not 100 million, you know, that kind of thing, which is quite possible.
how do you feel about what's sort of going on now in terms of distribution, the whole HBO Max thing? You have an opinion on that?
I have no opinion except the turmoil is kind of rough on people, and it's gonna be hard on me. This virus, which as we were talking, I had a pop-up on my screen that another politician, high-level politician, has died of coronavirus. And I'm sure if I keep reading, he'll have attended some maskless event. Hey, stop growling.
Summer.
There you go. There's Ollie, the little one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you can't say. God forbid I would be as bad with a camera.
You're muted again. There we go.
You're still muted.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Bing, bing, bing. Ramesh, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Mel Gibson, next question.
What comes up a lot here is people talk about taking notes. How do you approach taking notes?
Well, frankly, there's nothing more awful, because whatever you work really hard, you work, and finally you turn something in, and invariably they want to give you notes a day or so later. So you're still fresh from having just finished something that was hard, and they're already potentially dismantling it. You know, at least give me a month, but they don't. And so they're going to say stuff that makes no sense. They're going to say stuff. Here's the part you have to remember. Two things about notes. One is, often defensiveness doesn't work. For instance, often what they're saying isn't what they mean. They say, well, I just feel like the character's fidgety, or he bickers too much. Well, and you can say, well, no, he only bickers twice on page 22, and then they get on 57. I don't see how that's too much. But okay, you can defend all you want, but maybe they don't really mean what you got to read the note behind the note. What are they really saying? If they think there's something there, that's something wrong, studio execs aren't paid to teach writing classes. They're not going to be able to properly express what they're feeling is wrong. They may choose to say it's because of this, but you got to listen and say, you know what, I hear you, but I really think they're responding to maybe this, which could be a problem. I think what they really mean to say, they just don't know how to say it, is that they're feeling something like this. Now, how do I fix that? Because I'm sure it'll fix their note, even though it doesn't address specifically what they're saying. So always look for the note behind the note. The guy who's trying to express something, but he may have tried to be impressive, to try to be specific. He may have chosen the wrong way to say it, but he's speaking of something that is a problem for him, that you can maybe dig out. Maybe it's even, if you're honest with yourself, a problem for you too. And secondly, the process of listening to notes is horrible, because they're just listing them over and over, and it feels like the end of the world. So I always have a pad with me. Make a check mark next to the ones you can do. If he says a note that takes it sideways but not backwards, or if he says one that you don't understand why he would want that but doesn't change it, fine. The more check marks you can make, oh, thank God, I can do that one. Oh, I can do that one. Yeah, I can give him this. And if you look at your page like that, say they give you 20 notes and there are 9 check marks on that page, you're in luck, because you don't have to do every note. And you've already found 9 things that you can do. Whether you agree or not, it just means that they're not going to hurt the script, those 9 things. They're doable. So you start to get reassured, where instead of just listening to it as an overwhelming lump of just an onslaught of criticism, you start to look at it item by item as how much of this is viable that I can actually do and give them what they want. And like I said, the first note is, how can I give them what they want even though they're not telling me that that's what they want? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you gotten valuable notes? Have you gotten notes that were actionable, that you felt, yeah, this will truly elevate the scene or the character or the script?
You know, well, there's two things. Those are the kind of notes generally that you get from friends that you trust. That's why you hand your script to people that, you know, and hopefully they trust you in the same way with their work. And those friends are more likely to give you the sorts of notes as being writers themselves that you can actually improve it with. Quiet. Hey, idiot. Quiet. Then the second thing, what was I saying? You can prove oh yeah, there are smart executives. They're not all smart. But Kevin Feige is smart, the guy at Marvel. So we would knock heads once in a while, but you know, he knows how to make movies. And at the end of the day, I was rather proud of the work, not just because it was a collaboration, but because he had done things which made me look good. So hopefully you work with people like Kevin or like Joel Silver, who you can occasionally disagree with, who respects your opinion, but also has just a tremendous grasp of filmmaking. It's all how proficient, how good a filmmaker is the person you're working with. If it's a guy who's just been hired, he's 22 years old, and he's a lawyer, and he's now running a studio, sometimes that's not good.
Talk a little bit about your evolution into directing.
I felt like I wanted to do it because I could, because being a writer is the easiest entree into then, if they like the script and it's not too expensive, often they will let you direct it or try. But mostly I just would see things. I liked the versions of my films that were coming out, but there were things I would do differently. I'd watch a scene and say, yeah, that's sort of what I wanted, but you know, sometimes the director would prove me wrong and his version would be better. Donner did such a great job, for instance, on Lethal. But oftentimes I would say, I wish I had more say in this. I wish I'd been able to, like for that scene, you didn't want to pop, you didn't want to stay close. You want to pop wide and hold at that point. You want to let the action play out instead of doing a series of, you know, micro cuts there. I wish that he'd done that. Or I wish that this scene played a little longer and differently. I wish they didn't use this music. I wish that this, and pretty soon you realize that there's 10 things that you wanted to change that were fairly significant. And enough so that you think, well, what would it be if I had the power to make decisions? I don't think that I have the best abilities, decision-making abilities. I like to be helped by someone, a producer that knows what they're doing. Joel has been my go-to for a long time. Joel knows what he's doing, and he and I have a very good collaborative process. But he also allows me enough control that those 10 moments from my previous films where I was like, not that way, now I can do it my way, and he'll make sure it works well. It's a little bit of ego, but mostly it's about perfectionism and wanting those glitches that I see from other people's interpretations, the ability to sort of go in and smooth that down and only present the version that I would have enjoyed most.
Would you write a spec script today that you would consider not directing, or is anything that you're going to write now a project for you to direct?
You know, I don't know. It depends. I'd write something for a friend, perhaps. Writing is still such a precious and difficult and exasperating process for me that if I'm lucky enough to blood, sweat, and tear it long enough and to overcome, you know, to avoid the demons, then and have 120 pages at the end of it, I'm probably going to be prone to directing that because life's too short. It's so too rare that I have an idea that I come up with something I like. I'm not good at directing other people's stuff, I think. I don't. I have to go into a scene knowing why the scene's there, why it's intended, not just shooting what's there in a palatable way, but really, I have to be into it. I have to know why the scene's there, and if I wrote it, I know.
Somebody's asking, actually, Steve Enlow, who is a co-administrator of our group, he wants to know, if you were writing Lethal Weapon today, what might you do differently? Or perhaps any of your early scripts. How has your years in the business and just life in general informed you in a way that perhaps if you were going to write Lethal Weapon today, that it might be different?
Well, back then, my style, I think, was a little pulpier. It was a bit more action-oriented. I still love action, but I like the ability to play with the character dynamics a little more. I think these days, it's interesting. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I remember when I was writing it and directing, I thought, how is this possibly going to play? It's just all dialogue for the first half. But if you keep it lively and purposeful and you're making a point, if there's ideas in play, if you stuff the thing with ideas, then hopefully it'll work. I don't think my view has changed that much, in that the early screenplays, I was obsessed with just getting as many ideas into a scene as possible, so that you didn't have to read 4 pages to get one idea or to get one line of dialogue that's interesting. You try to put as much as possible in. You got to stuff it. It's like Tetris, and I wanted to boil it down so there were no spaces. Everything was doing 2 jobs. And I think I still do that. I don't think there's been a significant change in the process, except hopefully I've matured enough to be more concerned about the relationships of the people holding the weapons, and not so much just, the cacophony of the gunfire itself.
Eddie McFadden, who I believe is in Scotland,
Yes.
he wants to know, how much creative freedom have you enjoyed on the movies you've directed? And is your own influence inversely proportional to a film's budget?
It is. The influence I have is directly proportional in many ways to a film's budget. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Joel and I could do whatever we wanted. The budget was $14.2 million. The Nice Guys, we were outside a studio environment, independent money. I think the budget, net budget, was something like 48. So, and we had 2 big stars, so they just left us alone. So it was dealing with the stars and working out their dialogue and their actions, but not dealing with the meddling studio. It's rare to me that studio meddling makes a film better, because someone has said this, not me. What a studio tends to do is say, here's this nice thing you've made. It's kind of wild and crazy. Let's just sand off the edges a little bit. We like it, but it's sharp at the edge. Let's just sand it off. Well, and let's sand this too. Let's make this a little rounder over here too. And pretty soon they've sanded it down so it resembles everything else. And the sort of sharp protuberances that whatever marked it as unique have sort of unconsciously undergone this sort of template they invariably use, of just sort of making what's there seem a little bit more like everything else they've already done, or safer somehow. And I'm not perfect. I've blown it. I've made some mistakes in terms of creative choices, but I'd rather be corrected by anyone else except a studio, and one way to do that is to keep the budget low.
Thank you. Stephen Michael Sawinski wants to know, which one of your screenplays came closer to the vision you laid out in the script in comparison to when the movie was complete, and which one was the furthest?
Well, obviously the ones I directed were more likely to come out that way. Of the ones that I did not direct, I think Long Kiss Goodnight was probably the closest to what I'd written. although, you know, there's probably more there, but it was a long script, so you have to cut something. In terms of the furthest away, that would probably be Last Action Hero, just because it got rewritten so many times, and it was such a high-profile project that everyone's fingers were in that pie. And I suspect that probably if you just walked up to a person on the street in Pittsburgh and said, "Hey, did you do a draft of Last Action Hero?" They go, "Oh yeah," but that was after. You know. So that suffered a bit.
Ramesh?
You worked with Anthony, with Charles, with Fred on projects. How do you work when you're collaborating with someone? Do you read each other's scenes? Do you go off and write your own scenes and then do that? How does you know, put the outline together? How does that work?
Well, one of the best experiences I had was with a young Brit named Drew Pierce, and I got introduced to Drew and just told, "Meet your new partner." And this is the guy. They said, "Here's who you're going to be writing with." And I'm thinking, "Wait, I don't need a partner." He goes, "Well, you got one. It's him." And so we sort of eyed each other warily. But as we sat down to write, it's a fraternity. It's, you know, if you know what you're doing and you're not, if your ego doesn't get in the way, pretty soon you notice that, you know, you're respecting the other person's opinion instead of objecting to it, and you come to a point, first off, of mutual respect that's necessary for collaboration. Then we would talk the movie through, what we're trying to do. We would just talk about scenes and start to organize it over a table, and we'd meet probably for 2 weeks, just every day hammering out the scenes, scribbling on notepads. And then there would come a point after about 2 weeks or 3, where either Drew or I would say, "Okay, should we card this now? Are we ready? Is it fleshed out enough act by act that we can actually start saying, index carding it? Here's the first act, this scene followed by this scene." And that takes a couple weeks. And then you have a rough index card version of it. And each index card is a scene. From there, it becomes easy because you've had 7 weeks together or so of just talking about the movie and carding it out. So now you know each other, you've worked together, you've even arrived at a rough outline of scenes. Now you just assign the scenes. I'll take this one if you take that one. And that's usually how that works.
But you have a very distinct voice, and so you know, how do those voices match?
Well, because I was directing the film, I would take Drew's brilliant pages. He'd give me, you know, 20 pages that were brilliant, but they needed to be 11 pages. And so in condensing them, I would sort of insert stuff that made it consistent with my style and the rest of it, so that as you look through it, it's so much Drew, but it's through the filter of me trying to smooth it out and make it fit the rest of it. So my job was to condense and make it smooth, and he would just write and write, and his scenes were amazing. He's such a wit that he'll give you 3 pages of the funniest stuff you've ever read, and my job was to make it a page and a half of just the best lines and the best jokes, and then to make sure it fit with my scenes, which I was writing. But believe me when I say that, you know, a lot of it was just editing with Drew, because I was so delighted to get his new packet of pages. I relied on it. I knew they were going to be good. If we assigned a scene to Drew, I would just relax and go, "Okay, that's taken care of." It's akin to, I liken it to working with people like on Star Trek. On Star Trek, you don't call up Scotty and say, "I need more power," and he goes, "Sorry, I've tried, I've failed, I can't do it." No, Scotty, he says, "I cannot do it, Captain," but he gets it done. He says, "Spock, do this." Spock gets it done. You turn your back. You don't have to watch him. He's getting it done. So who's your McCoy? Who's your Spock? Who's your Scotty? Is my philosophy for working with people, you know.
Marlon Green is a huge fan of the Monster Squad. Do you think a kids' adventure movie could get made today? Why or why not?
I think not only could it get made today, one of the reasons the Monster Squad is potentially a problem to make today is that there are too many similar things. Stranger Things being the primary example of the ultimate kid's adventure. It's a bunch of kids in the suburbs who go up against horrifying supernatural events. There's numerous cartoons along those lines. There's YA, which was not as big when I was starting out, the young adult kind of thing, where you have supernatural adventure with kids. So, if anything, I think the trick with the Monster Squad would be how to stand out against what's become sort of a cottage industry, which is this sort of Stranger Things imitators.
Yeah. Robert Rodriguez just did this movie for Netflix, this We Can Be Heroes, which is, all these sort of, I don't even think they're tweens. They're actually like little kids who are superheroes. Have you seen that, Ramesh, yet?
No, I haven't. I just put it in my queue yesterday, actually, as a matter of fact.
It seems like he's delving back into the universe of
Spy
Shark
Kids.
Boy and Lava Girl.
Right.
Or Lava Boy and Shark Girl. I didn't realize that there was a universe, but there is now.
So.
Yeah. I prefer the realism of, if you're going to do stories about kids, It is the other one. It is kids against, and to the extent that you treat it realistically, it's going to be better, I think. It has, if you see the first It, I don't like the second one, but if you see the first one, there's all kinds of suggestions that these kids aren't happy, that they're scarred by this for life. The girl's father clearly has been molesting her in the movie. It's not pleasant. And giving kids that much discretion in a movie, but also respecting a young audience enough to accept that we're going to deal with kids, but actually have them be unhappy and be dealing with things that are genuinely terrifying, and not just monsters, human monsters. I think that's kind of, there's a lot of it out there. Monster Squad is very problematic because of so many competing ideas, even ones which may have had their roots in Monster Squad, but are now more popular.
Yeah. It just seems like everybody wants to know about sequels. Is there going to be a sequel to Nice Guys? Is there going to be a sequel to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang? Is there going to be a sequel to The Last Boy Scout? How about The Last Kiss Goodnight? Everybody wants to know about sequels.
Well, if they're sequel mad, then they can probably find a universe of Star Wars sequels to slake their incendiary thirst. In the meantime, I don't think I'm going to have sequels to most. Lethal Weapon, I'll get a check off that one. I hope that gets made. But I don't think it really needs a sequel, but fine. Last Boy Scout, no. I don't know if you get Russell and Ryan together again. They wanted to do a sequel to Nice Guys, but it didn't make enough money, and so I don't think anyone's going to take that shot or that chance. Nice Guys was considered a box office failure. It, probably breaks even, or who knows if it makes a little ultimately with the streaming market. I know it's popular critically and people tend to like it, but that's different than, Nice Guys is a sort of a cult movie. A lot of people like it, but it's not a water cooler movie. It's not one where everyone at the office is talking about it. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, everyone knows that. Everyone's seen it twice. Right. So no sequels on the horizon for any of this stuff. Although Monster Squad people are looking to find a way to do that.
Well, there you have it. That's the inside pitch on sequels. Ramesh, what do you got?
A lot of people want to know tips for writing good action that pops on the page, action that is fun to read, but will also, you can visualize and it'll look good on the screen. And you do a lot of that.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to, if I can, let's see. I'm going to an article here, and I'll just. Sam Delaney in England wrote a piece, and I gave him my tips.
Yeah, the Guardian piece.
And it's pretty good. Pulling it up, and I'll to remind me what I think is good action here. I say that the action on the page, whatever. Well, first off, the action has to go hand in hand with the story. It's to reveal a crucial element of the plot or the character. So during an action scene, we should find out something about the character. First off, they should be the point of an action scene is the danger, and the danger is designed to stress and push the character to the extent of their endurance.
Did you mute yourself again, Shane?
He's not muted.
Oh, okay.
All right. So we're experiencing technical difficulties.
Yes.
Please stand by. It happens.
Yeah.
Let him know that, you know, he can just click the link again and come back in if he's been disconnected at all. I am scrolling through your questions that you left on the page, and Ramesh is going through the questions and comments that you're leaving for us right now in this chat. And so this might be a good time if you have to go to the bathroom. Go take a quick break.
Yes.
You want to get something to drink? You want to go get a snack?
I just let him know.
This could be it.
Yeah.
Take a moment. Ramesh, you want to sing? You want to do some a little bit of soft shoe or something?
But we do have, I think, at least like 2 or 3 of our members have birthdays today. I know Ian Shaw has. Oh, there, Shane's back.
Oh, happy birthday to Ian Shaw and anybody else whose birthday is today.
So there you are.
And
how
here
old
he is.
is Ian Shaw? Ian Shaw, how old are you?
I don't know how old Ian is.
He's a child. He's in his 30s.
Yeah, he's in his 30s. He has a film coming out next year with Mark Wahlberg, directed by Antoine Fuqua, called Infinite.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's a big fan of yours. So
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's very sweet. It's funny. My guilty pleasures are those Equalizer films. I mean, look, if you're going to do an action movie, Denzel Washington is the finest American actor, in my thinking. I'd watch him, pick his toes. And it's just, I hope he has a great experience with this movie. I hope it gets everything out that he wants. But he's in good hands with those two, sounds like.
Yeah.
Anytime you're introduced to people, do they want you to read your screenplays? Are they trying to pitch you their ideas?
Yeah, it's inevitable. And what I normally say is, all right, fill out a release form. If you want to send me the script, send it to my agent, and I'll either get to it or I won't. Most of the time I don't, because I have such a stack of screenplays. Other times I'll say I just don't do that. The problem too is there's so much litigation in the world that without a release form, certainly it would be impossible for me to help anyone. I've had cases where a guy called me up once, never met him. He said, "Yeah, Mr. Black, I got your number from so-and-so. Listen, I got a hell of an idea for a screenplay. It's just a great story. And I'd like you to write it with me. I'd love to, and I'll even let you in on, I'll give you half of the action."
It's very generous.
You know what, buddy? I am so glad you called. Oh my God. I was so dry. I have no ideas. I got nothing, but thank God you came along. Now you have an idea. Oh my God, this is the day I've been waiting for my entire life. Thank you, for Christ, for saving me from my lonely, idea-free, dry existence where I'm useless without you. And I said, "What's the idea?" He said, "Well, I can't tell you that. You might steal it." So So I'll just blindly say, okay, I'm flying you out. I don't know what your idea is, but when you get out here, maybe you'll tell me, and then we'll share half the profits after I write it for you. Yeah, so there's just a lot of ignorance about people tend to think that's why I like the fact that I think I'm a piece of shit, because I don't hold up a script and go, I'm a genius. I tend to go, it's okay. I hope it's better. And the people invariably who come to me saying, I'm a genius. Look at my script. It's like, yeah, okay, well, I'm quite frankly stalled on this whole genius thing. I'm not seeing it, you know. And that's I would urge people who were just so in love with every precious idea they jot on a napkin while they, evacuate their bowels in some hotel Marriott, that it's probably a good idea to know that there's a billion ways to write something, and not every idea is precious, and the idea to improvise sort of on the fly, just keep coming up with different and new ideas, that's kind of where it's at. Very few people actually have a script that's, and the other is the true story, because my grandfather was responsible single-handedly for the invention of the rubber duck. It's like, okay, maybe there's a guy out there who'll make that. That's not for me.
Yeah, knowing what's a movie, what's not a movie, perhaps, and also what's a good fit for you. I read a lot of scripts, I hear a lot of pitches, and I'm sort of like, wow, why would somebody even think this is a movie?
Yeah.
And then you read the screenplay, and it's not a movie. It isn't even a screenplay. However, though, I would suggest anybody who wants you to read the script, just send your script to Shane Black in care of Ramesh.
Oh, good grief. That's just
Ramesh
what I
will
need.
read all of those scripts.
And you think he's joking. I will get them now, is the problem.
Maybe you shouldn't do it, because then Ramesh will be mad and he'll leave me, and he'll leave the group.
So, no.
So just send me all your ideas with a little note signed with a notary that says, free to steal, I will not sue you. And then there will be a rash of movies next year that I've written.
So do you have a book of sort of unused ideas or bad ideas? And do you have a drawer full of spec scripts that never saw the light of day or never sold?
Sadly, I'm not as prolific as that, in the sense that ideas are very hard for me to come by. There is in the drawer somewhere a Doc Savage script that I wrote with my friends Chuck and Anthony that I'm actually quite fond of, but the budget is a net of 150 million, and it's not as, the fact that we couldn't get it made with Dwayne Johnson, even though people seem to like the script, it was set in the 30s, as it necessarily must be, I think. And they didn't want to do that. They said that's too expensive. That pushes. They were willing to spend a certain amount, but if it were Batman, it's one thing. Doc Savage is known to a portion of the population, and Batman is known at the water cooler. Everyone in your office, if you say Batman, they'll say, of course. The Doc Savage, they'll say, I think Joe over there's read some. The ubiquitous Joe, the guy who's the pulp fan Joe.
People want to know.
And actually, since it is Ian Shore's birthday today,
Yes.
he has a question that he said he would love to hear about Shane's experience adapting George Gilman's Edge.
That was an odd experience, because at the time, Edge is inherently, he's not just a misogynist, he's a misanthrope. A Western hero that's a complete anti-hero, hates everyone, self-deals. He's just a feral survivor. But for some reason, these books were such a dirty, tarnished, and just rough version of the Old West. I thought, what we've never seen is we've seen Outlaw Josie Wales, but Edge pushed it a bit further, where it was just raunchy pulp. with just blood, guts, and but there was writing in there in those books. He was a craftsman, Terry Harknett. He likened himself not to a great writer, but to a guy who just knew how to build a bird box. You know, he could just a bird house. I guess Bird Box was the movie. Terry Harknett could just, he was a carpenter. He could make things that worked. And he wrote these books under the name George Gilman about these cowboys. And they were just these vicious, to the point where some of the people working on the movie say, you know what, I finally read one of these. These are awful. They're gross. I say, yeah, it's the Old West full of blood, pus, and shit. And I don't know why it appealed to me, but just this sort of revisionist Western with a lot of, so we made it. There were things I would change about it, but it came out pretty well. We had a great cast. And Amazon, at a high level, after they'd spent millions on this, like the head of Amazon watched it and said, why is this on my TV? This is what we paid for this, sir. This is for our network. He goes, this piece of shit is for our network. So he, you know, he did not get it. And at the time, I think if I'd done, at that time, given their editorial policy at Amazon, if I had said, I want to do a story about, you know, two lesbians who start a feminist newspaper in the 1890s, only to find out that they can invent hot air balloons and float around the world, you know, discussing feminism, he would have said, I'll do that one. Or the story of an obese child, you know, they were always very sort of oddly historical or socially conscious or kind of, they were intellectual. And Edge was anything but intellectual. It was just rough and rowdy. And it didn't appeal to a network that was at that point trying to establish this sort of, you know, they did, I forget the shows they did, but they were all very quirky, sharp, socially conscious, and good, just not Edge.
Do you remember in the beginning, Amazon would post these pilots and then the audience would vote on which pilot should be picked up? Do you remember that? When they did that for a little while?
Yeah, right.
Wait a moment. You've inadvertently become muted again.
Oh.
And frozen.
Hang on.
We can hear him.
1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. Where's my Zoom?
There we go.
Where'd you go, Zoom?
It's StreamYard.
It's StreamYard, not Zoom. Oh, there you go. You're back. Yes, you're back. So.
Can I just
give me a second, because my phone just went dead.
There you go.
So there is a ticking clock. All right, so we just lost Shane, and
Okay.
But he'll come back. Ramesh, why don't you hear it? And he's coming now. Here he is.
Okay.
He's back and better than ever.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever someone calls in, my phone freaks out. So.
Oh, well, again, we really appreciate your time this morning. So Pete Woodruff has a question, and I just lost it, and it's about Westerns. And she says, John Ford is king of the Western. She wants to know, who do you think is the prince?
You know, for me, it has always been Howard Hawks, because it's the kind of storytelling it's the kind of story I grew up with, the kind I like. You know, you see the modern filmmakers that I've cut my teeth on that I enjoy, like Lawrence Kasdan was my idol for a while, still is. You know, Silverado obviously wouldn't exist unless he'd seen, you know, El Dorado, Rio Bravo, and all these kinds of Red River, these Howard Hawksian things. Hawks just had a playful sense of humor, coupled with what at that time was inherently a rough kind of sensibility about the Old West. It was pure pulp, pure action, romanticism, and not in the romantic like man and woman sense of it, but in the sweep of a romantic action Western. Howard Hawks is the greatest.
I think P was surprised by that. She wrote, wow. So
how much do you think about structure when you're writing 3-act structure or whatever it is when you're putting it together? How much does that play into it? And also, you're very fond of setups, payoffs, and reversals. And if you can talk about that.
Yeah. Well, the structure to me has always been puzzling. I know by page 35 or so you want to think about wrapping up what you would consider a first act, and having set the table for complication to follow. But to me, talking about 3 acts of the movie is almost if you had a class called 3-act structure, it would be a very short class for me. The students would come in, I'd say, well, there's a beginning, see, and then there's sort of this middle part, and then you got to get to the end. And then they'd say, what's next? Like lunch. It's pretty much that. So
you don't subscribe to things like the inciting incident by page 10 and the low point at the end of the second act, or any of the save the cat terms.
You can get something from those, but to me, you have 2 choices. I've inadvertently been blessed with the second. The first choice is to read all those books and try to construct something that adheres to the rules. The second is to have read, just because you're a lonely kid, 1,000,000 books and watched 1,000,000 movies, and so you sort of intuitively do it. I think most people intuitively know that they want things to move faster or slower, that they're not getting enough character development, or that things need to. That the inciting incident thing is something I just know. If you read a detective novel, you know that the detective gets hired, and there's a moment where he goes to interview someone and the door is ajar and he walks in and they're dead. It's like, okay, you know what a MacGuffin is, not because someone taught you the term MacGuffin, but because even if you didn't know that name, you've read 1,000,000 books and you just know that there's something around which the plot tends to swirl that allows you to, as an armature, sort of, it exists to hang everything else on that you wish to say about the character. As far as setups and payoffs, it's so important to have runners, things that pay off at, like simple ones, ones that are even too simple, like In the Line of Fire, the Clint Eastwood movie. He always rides the bus. He doesn't like people. He rides the bus to work. And then he gets with this partner, Dylan McDermott, and they develop this wonderful relationship. They drive around together. They really get into each other's heads. Dylan McDermott, halfway through the movie, gets shot on Clint Eastwood's watch. Clint Eastwood's character is devastated. The next scene is him just on a bus again. And you remember, oh, that's right, he rides the bus, but he didn't for a long time because he met somebody. Setups and payoffs, I think we all sort of know what they are. It's just often, I would suggest to you this too, sometimes you won't know that you want to set up in a payoff, but as you write, you'll start writing a scene on page 63 and think, this would play so much better if I'd set it up earlier. And then you go back. That's the benefit of writing non-sequentially, or just sort of, you can always tinker behind the scenes. No one sees you. No one knows what you're doing. Studios hire writers like a black box. They put money in it and they get a product come out the other side. So you can go back and add things and pretend that you thought of them before. It's weird. I used to have a catalog in my head of setups and payoffs in movies I could point to, and I'm blanking on it this morning. But I'm sure each of your, if we were live, I would point to the audience and each person could give me a setup or a payoff from a movie. Like throughout the, I hate eggs. I won't eat eggs. I don't like eggs. Oh no, eggs! That kind of thing. And hopefully there's an emotion to it. One of the best setups and payoffs, there's a movie called Party of Five. John Voight. He's about to go on a cruise with his kids and his wife dies. And he's left to sort of deal with the aftermath, not only of their mother's death, but have sort of wrangling these kids that to this point he's just sort of been the weekend funny uncle guy, who gets to go home, and now he's saddled with 5 kids on a cruise. And he doesn't like it. And he even doesn't like some of the kids that much. And he's loading the boat, he's loading the luggage, and there's this one kid who goes, God damn it. What the heck? Weighs a ton. What's in here? And the kids, oh, that's Jeremy's blocks. What do you mean blocks? Wooden blocks with letters on them, because Jeremy is autistic and has to work out his words by spelling them with blocks, and he tries his best, but he's not very good at it. He's learning to read. He goes, oh Christ, now I got a kid with a disability? Jesus. So Jeremy keeps playing with these blocks in the background. Calling him Jeremy, I'm sure it's not. And he says, yeah, whatever. The kid goes, Daddy, I'm playing with the blocks. He goes, yeah, whatever, kid, whatever. And then halfway through, John Voight has this change of heart. He's devastated. He comes back to the room. He's crying. He's ready to give it all up. And Jeremy's on the floor. He's been trying to, he's trying to spell policeman. And Jeremy looks up and says, Daddy, did I get it right? And he goes, what? And he looks, and it says policeman, except it's not quite right. The M and the N reversed, or what? And it's because it's not right. But he tried so hard, and he almost got it. And he looks at this, it says policeman, but it's just not right. And the setup of watching this kid play with the blocks and finally spell the word wrong, but knowing how hard he tried, and he almost got it. That hits with such a power. And you see the look on John Voight's face, and that's his moment. That changes him. Seeing this kid who just wants to impress his dad, who was saying, who's probably, while dad was off doing his selfish stuff, this kid was just over and over trying to spell. And finally says, did I get it right? And he goes, of course you did. And that's a good setup and payoff. Then there's reversals, which means just reversals. It means tricks, twists and turns. Something happens, you go, oh, that shifts things. It could be psychological. It could be, it could be as simple as what William Goldman describes as his first reversal, which is a guy trying to escape from a cage, does everything to get the key, and finally, throws the belt and he pulls the broom, and he says, it's a 10-minute scene of him trying to get the key off the wall so he can, and finally he gets it off the wall, drags it over, pulls up the key, and then it's the wrong key. He totally wasted his time. It had nothing to do with the cell he's in. So that's a reversal. Action scenes are full of it. I liken it to a joke. Ramesh knows this story. There was a show called Hee Haw. And on Hee Haw, these country characters, these sort of, hayseed, seed spitting, straw chewing hicks would tell jokes. And one of the jokes, it seemed, was a perfect summation of what it means to write reversals in an action scene. And the joke is very simple. It says, hey, Billy Bob. Yeah, Jethro. Did you? I know we're going to the Midwest. I'm not being condescending. I actually knew a Billy Bob. So there. You hear about the guy that the plane was going to crash, and he jumped out, fell out of a plane without a parachute. He says, "Whoa, that's terrible." He says, "No, that's good, because on the way out the plane, he actually managed to grab a parachute and take it with him." "Oh, that's good." "Well, no, it's not, because he couldn't wrestle into the parachute." "Oh, that's bad." "No, it's good, because finally he put his feet through and gets into the parachute." "Okay, well, that's good." "No, that's bad, because the parachute wouldn't open." He goes, oh, well, that's bad. No, that's good because it finally opens. There's a reserve chute. Well, that's good. No, that's bad. There's a hole in the chute. He goes, oh, that's bad. No, that's okay because he's plummeting fast. But down below him on the ground, he sees there's a big pile of hay. Oh, well, that's good. No, that's bad because in the middle of the hay, there's a pitchfork sticking straight up with the tines. He goes, well, that's bad. No, that's good because he missed the pitchfork. Well, that's good. Well, no, that's bad. He missed the haystack. Okay. So it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. I'm out of it. I'm not out of it. And you can, in terms of your protagonist, if things happen coincidentally to lump favor upon your protagonist, no one buys it. You know, if he's running from a policeman and all of a sudden conveniently, you know, a car pulls up and it says, get in, you know. But if he gets in the car and there's another bad guy with a gun pointed at him, now you buy it because you're reversing it. You're heaping more trouble on your protagonist. Reversals seem to work a lot when they work against your protagonist. They don't just benefit them. It's just a twist or a turn in the story, something you expect. You know, guy, you know, goes to the house. He's so certain he's got that. He walks into the bedroom. He pulls his gun and says, "I've got you." And you know, and then he gets hit from behind, and it's not the person he thought it was after all. It's someone completely different, and you weren't expecting it. Horror movie reversals. Guy goes to the shower, thinks the creature's there. He pulls the curtain. There's nothing there. He turns around. Poof, it's right there. Now that was a reversal which was new in the 80s, which has since become such a trope in horror that you even laugh at it now. But initially, that was a great reversal.
Yeah. So Ramesh, as we begin to wind down,
there are a couple of questions. One is, how would you approach the market today, like pitching original stuff when there's such an overwhelming emphasis on existing IP?
It's tough. I would say what I will do, because I fully intend to pitch something that's not existing, I will try to keep the budget down. So I could say, look, this is interesting and new, and you can probably do it for $5 million. And if you get a really good actor, you know, interested, we can do it for 10. Now, the problem is, starting out, you might not have the access. You know, I've had some movies out there, so maybe I could get that done. Pitching original material now for someone starting out is tough. Selling your spec script as your first script when you don't have access in Hollywood or you don't really have an agent yet, that's tough. So get an agent first off. I don't know how you do it. I could, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, how do you get in the club? Well, you have to already be in the club. But some people manage it. You just have to get an agent. If you live in, this is worldwide, this is across America. I'm sorry, people listening. One of the bad pieces of news is you'll probably at some point have to go to Hollywood. Because it's really hard as a fresh young writer to get an agent and succeed. Stop wishing me Happy New Year, woman. And it's time, if you're serious, I think, to consider going where the play is. You know, if you're talking about theater and cinema, you're talking about New York and LA. If you want to sell screenplays, it's tough to do it from Dubuque. But once again, that's for what it's worth. Take your shot. Take your shot means come out and live in a crap apartment. You know, fraternize and be your best self. Make friends. Don't be in it together. Or don't be it alone. Always try to get together with people of a like mind, people on the same beam who will support and endorse you in a way that even when you are down, they lift you up and you hopefully return the favor. It's a communal thing about love. It's about, without getting groovy, it's about the fact that we're all in this together, regardless of stature or previous sales or non-sales. We all should love each other. We all got to man up. And kindness ultimately it's the only thing that matters in life, and certainly among a group of people all striving for a creative goal, torturing themselves over the noble process of trying to just do something on paper that has resonance and meaning. if you stay humble and you surround yourself with supportive people, you got to come out to LA and you got to just give it your shot and make it about love and that we're all in this together, because we are. And I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. We've had bad days, good days, written bad things. Celebrate our weirdnesses, because that's the thing. Love means that I understand your weirdness, and I've been there myself, and I'm not afraid to tell you that. I'll be honest with you that your bad days and mine are the same, but I can help you get through them. So try to take your ambition to be, to try to curtail that fantasy of standing on stage accepting an award long enough to actually sit down in a chair and do something you love and give us something. Give us the love. Support the people around you and don't compete with them. And just enjoy your talent. As much as you may hate yourself or feel fraudulent, God gave you an ability. You can put it on the shelf or you could take it out and let it shine. I would suggest that the humble shine is the best. The one that says, whatever it is I've got, I'm a channel for. So I'm not going to pretend that this is me being great. I'm just pretending that I'm cleaning my temple enough to let the light shine in so it hits the right spot and forms an image. And be part of a community. Come join us. Come to LA. Be part of the love. And don't be mean.